Oh yeah. 20 pounds in 20 days. That's awesome.
Warning, I'm a guinea pig, not a guru. I'm not a doctor or nutritionist. This could be dangerous. So if you're under the age of 18, pregnant or breastfeeding, if you're underweight, if you have heart, liver, or kidney problems, diabetes, or have a history of fainting, do not try this. Goals. Goals are just another way of saying what's driving me. So if you don't agree with my goals, or if my goals don't apply to you, then you can stop watching now. Goal number 1, lose body fat. I want to go from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. Goal number 2, I don't want to work out. For a couple of reasons. 1, I hate going to the gym. 2, I want to prove that you don't have to work out in order to lose fat. Goal number 3, no freakouts. This isn't a restrictive diet where you can't eat bread or pasta. I think if you restrict yourself too much, you end up binging anyways.
Shower, I'm triggered. I get in the car, I'm triggered. I go for a walk, I'm triggered.
We get there and I'm like, where's the pizza?
The simple science of weight loss. Technically, we have 3 sources of fuel in the body, but 2 main fuels. The main fuel source is from sugar and carbs. But when we eat too much sugar and carbs, our bodies are like crazy doomsday preppers, and we start storing that extra energy.
Colleen and her husband spend 6 to 8 hours a day stockpiling enough food and water to last them for years.
This is where we store all of our yummy freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. Just this closet alone, we have enough for about 8 people for 3 years.
Stored body fat is our second main source of fuel.
Now, compare all this to the case of Angus Barbieri, a Scottish man who in 1965 fasted for over 380 days straight. That is, he took in no food whatsoever, nothing but water, black coffee, and straight tea for just over a year. He lost 276 pounds, going from 456 pounds to 180. A case report published by the Dundee University Department of Medicine in 1973 said, "The patient remained symptom-free, felt well, and walked about normally." And prolonged fasting in this patient had no ill effects.
So how exactly do we get fat?
So what happens when you eat is that insulin goes up. So most foods, almost all foods, have a mixture of macronutrients, fats, carbohydrates, and protein. So your insulin goes up to a varying degree. And insulin basically is the hormone that tells your body to store fat. So it stops your body from burning fat. You start to store some of the sugar and store some of the fat, okay? And this is normal. This is a normal situation. So carbohydrates get turned into glycogen, which are chains of glucose. So chains of glucose in the liver is basically a storage form of sugar, okay? And when you have too much of that, then your liver produces lipids, which is called de novo lipogenesis, and it basically stores fat. Okay.
So too much carbs make you fat.
When you eat too many carbohydrates, you raise your blood sugar. Since high blood sugar is toxic, your body releases insulin to bring it down. But your body can only burn a little bit of sugar at a time. So what happens to the rest of it?
Your storage sites for carbohydrate are limited, and we've got unlimited storage places for fat. So the body ends up just converting the carbohydrate to fat.
And after bringing down your blood sugar, insulin does its other job. It tells your body to store fat.
This is a cruel example of the same idea.
Foie gras is the fattened liver of a duck or a goose. And this is something that can only happen if the duck or the goose is force-fed. This process is done until the liver grows from being about this big to being about this big.
So the question is, how do we lose fat?
We know this because insulin inhibits lipolysis, right? What that means is it stops you from getting the fat coming out. That's its job. That's its normal job. So if you have a lot of insulin, right? So normally if you eat a huge meal, your insulin is high, it's going to tell the body to move all the storage in this way. If your insulin is very high, then you can't get the food back out this way. And that's the problem.
So carbs raise insulin, and insulin stops the release of fat storage. So let's just get rid of all carbs, right? Like Atkins, keto, or paleo. No. That's like saying forest fires are bad, so let's get rid of all fire. Instead, let's control carbs and use them to our advantage. I'm talking about carbohydrate manipulation. Let's control how much carbs we eat and when we eat them, alternating between using carbs to run our bodies normally and cutting carbs for short periods of time to dip into our fat stores. Okay, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. What do I do to lose 40 pounds in 80 days? Well, my secret is intermittent fasting. This is what I do to lose 2 pounds every week without exercise. I've lost 10 pounds in the first 3 days. This is the most effective way to start using your emergency reserves, aka your fat storage. So what happens when you fast? Are you starving yourself? How are you getting energy?
The organism has to feed on itself. But how can it provide the fuel needed for its survival? The body has 3 fuels: glucose, fats, and proteins. The essential fuel is glucose, which the body absolutely needs in order to function. The brain cannot do without it. But after a day of fasting, the glucose supply is exhausted. How does the organism adapt? It soon makes glucose from protein, and particularly from that found in the muscles. It'll also draw on its reserves of fat to create a substitute for glucose. This fasting fuel is known as ketone bodies. It is these ketone bodies that will be the main food supply for the brain. The work is done by the liver, which is a real factory for transformations in the body.
Your body is designed to store food. And when you take little breaks from food, or in times of starvation, you start dipping into those stored fats. If you want to know more, click on my next video. I'm going to cut 20 pounds for summer. I'll give you examples of what I eat, what times I eat, when I don't eat, the supplements I take, and I'll show you in real time me losing 2 pounds a week easily.